everyone, it's Nichol here for Simon Says Stamp, and today I'm showcasing the December 2019 card kit called Gnome for the Holidays. This card kit is so adorable, and I absolutely love the little gnome wafer thin die that's included. And I knew that I wanted to create some action wobble cards using some of the action wobbles included in the kit. In fact, almost everything you see on these cards is from the kit, from the stamps and dies to the cardstock, pattern paper, action wobbles, blending brush, and even the envelopes. We're going to start with some of the Schoolhouse red cardstock trimmed down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. This is going to completely cover the front of an A2 sized card base. Then I'm going to take some sentiment stamps from the Simon Says Stamp Gnome for the Holidays 6x8 clear stamp set. We're going to lay these out down near the bottom of the card panel. I'm using I'll Be Gnome for Christmas for the first card. Both cards are created the same except for a difference in the sentiments used on the card designs. And then this card, the first one, features only the little gnome wafer thin die included in the kit. And my second card shows how you can combine this little gnome with the previously released gnome die for 2 different sized gnomes. Also, I am adding some of the snowflakes from the Simon Says Stamp Gnome for the Holidays stamp set, and we're going to stamp these around the border of the card. We're going to ink them up with the embossing and watermark ink from we're going to use the Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink. Ink up those snowflakes and greeting, and then sprinkle on white embossing powder. I made sure to use a powder tool first to help keep the embossing powder only on the stamped sentiment and images. Then I'm going to heat emboss and continue adding snowflakes around the perimeter of the card. I don't need any in the center of the design since this is where I'm going to be placing my gnomes and they're going to be covering that up. This adds to the wintry Christmas feel of this card design. I love that we're seeing gnomes everywhere, out in the stores for holiday decor and all kinds of things, and that's kind of, trickled down into the card making and stamping industry as well. So these die-cut gnomes are just so much fun. I love piecing them together to create really cute card designs. Once we have all of our snowflakes added to the perimeter of our design, we want to make sure and clean off that excess powder because it really doesn't look great on a card. To do this, I like to take a dry cloth. I use a microfiber cloth, in fact, one very similar to what I use to clean off my stamps. But I like to take a dry, clean one that doesn't have any stamp cleaner on it and just buff away that powder. You can use other tools as well. Sometimes you can even use your finger or something like that. It just depends on how big of an area. For this, I find a nice dry cloth will buff away that perfectly. I'm also going to keep that cloth handy because we're going to be inking and darkening up the edges of our panel with a dark red ink, and I want to remove that excess ink that will be sitting on top of the embossed areas. You're going to want to make sure that the heat embossed images have completely dried before you buff away that excess powder, which I did off camera. I'm taking the blending brush included in the kit, and I am going to ink around the edges with Simon Says Stamp Merlot dye ink. Then I'm pretty firmly buffing away that excess ink that sits on top of the embossed areas. It's going to be a subtle effect, but it's going to darken the edges of our card panel really nicely. This is going to leave the center of the panel that nice, beautiful schoolhouse red. When this dye ink dries all the way, you definitely, it's not a real drastic change in color, but it does help kind of darken up those edges and help focus your eye in on what's going to be going on in the center of the card. Do make sure you buff away any excess ink, especially from the snowflakes and such. Off camera, I die cut all of my gnomes, and I die cut way more than I actually need, and I'll be sharing another project with those here one of these days because I just love the gnomes so much. The pattern paper included in the kit this month is called it's the PhotoPlay Kringle & Company 6x6 paper. I love this. This is totally my jam. I love all the red and black plaids and gray and black and gray and white and red and white, whatever. I love all of that. Very, very fun. There's also a sheet of Cartabella light silver shimmer cardstock that I'm using. This is what I use to die cut the beards. The actual gnome die is a single die, so you will have to die cut that die multiple times from different colors of cardstock. Then it has an outline die that I die cut from some of the white cardstock included in the kit. On that silver shimmer beard, I did take some Copic markers in warm gray 2 and 5 and add some feathering to add that shading to give their beards that awesome texture. I kept the silver shimmer nose and I actually inlaid that into the design to finish building the gnome. And then I've die cut the gnome again from smooth white cardstock, and I'm going to place that nose on top. The reason I like to do that is it makes the nose a little more prominent and it sticks up a little higher since it's not actually inlaid into the design. For the nose, I'm going to color that with E00, E11, and E13. This really makes that nose a prominent feature on these adorable little gnomes. So our first little guy here has kind of the black and red plaid outfit. We're going to take an action wobble and we're going to remove the backing paper from one side and adhere that to the back of our gnome. Kind of in the center is where I like to go. And he's going to go right in the center of the card here in just a second. I'll secure him. And then he's going to be the one that has movement. And when you touch him, and I'll show you here in a little bit, he will kind of wobble back and forth, which is so much fun. Let's go ahead and build our next two gnomes. Same as before, they just have two different outfits. So since the action wobble guy has the red and black outfit, I decided the two gnomes on either side were going to have black and gray, just two different pattern papers. The pattern papers in this kit this month are, like I said, my favorite. I really love them. And I think they work really well for paper piecing as the patterns are not super huge. You can see they're sized really nicely for these gnomes. And I'm just going to put these together really quickly. You can see I'm feathering in dark. I did this fast. I know I've sped this up for the video, but I did very, very fast shading and coloring. Inlaying, using a crystal katana to pick up those pieces and inlay them, add the small pieces especially. Don't forget to color in the noses. Again, very fast, quick coloring here, but I think it really makes the gnome. These two gnomes on either side then are going to be adhered just with liquid adhesive or a tape runner. And once I have them in place, I can add my action wobble. I didn't want to add him because I need him to be in the forefront until I had the other two guys in place. So then we can remove the backing paper from the action wobble, and you're getting 3 in the kit, and pop him in place, and you can see he shakes there. Now I decided I want the recipient to know that this card has movement. I'm taking the I Move sentiment and an arrow from the Heffy Doodle Interactively Yours stamp set and stamping that there on my card with clear embossing ink and heat embossing with white. I did this because I really wanted I want there to be that action word on the card that says this card does something, but I didn't want it to take away from the design. So since I have the white embossing in the background, I chose to do the white embossing for this as well. Just kind of flows a lot nicer. Once I have my sentiment there, and I didn't really like how it looked the first time, so before I heat embossed, I removed the embossing powder with a dry paintbrush. I heat set that with with my heat tool to dry the ink, and then I just re-stamped it, re-inked it, added my embossing powder, and then when this is dry, make sure it's dry, go ahead and buff away that excess powder. My favorite thing to do for these gnomes is to take mini pom-poms and decorate the tips of their hat. So that they are each getting a pom-pom, whether it is a mini white or mini red pom-pom, and these are all left over from previous Simon Says Stamp card kits. I love to keep all these little components because you never know when they're going to come in handy, and I think they just make the perfect finishing touch for these gnomes. I'm also going to take those warm gray markers that I used for the beard and just add a little subtle shading to the word Christmas. Because these are open letters, this is a great opportunity to add a little color if you want to, but it definitely isn't required. Once I've done this, I can add my panel to a white top fold card base. Remember that the panel measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches and completely covers the front of a card. So there's not going to be any border around this. Look how cute that little wobble is. I just love it. To finish my card, I am going to take some Nouveau Crystal drops in liquid mercury, which is a nice dark gray color, and add that accent to the center of my snowflakes in the background. I opted for a dark silver black color rather than white, as I felt like it tied in nicely to the colors I used to paper piece my little gnome. With Nouveau Crystal drops, you want to remember that there's going to be some dry time. I like to let the card sit for a good 24 hours at least before trying to put it in an envelope and mailing it. My second card panel was created exactly like the first. You can see it over there to the left. The only difference is I used Chillin' with My Gnomies from that Gnome for the Holidays 6x8 stamp set. But I went ahead and did the card panel exactly the same with the snowflakes around the perimeter and that Merlot ink blended around the edges. This time I am building the original gnome for the center wobble on my card, and then he will have little gnomes from the card kit on either side. I wanted to show how fun it is that the gnomes work together. I especially love that the little flip on his hat on the large gnome goes to the left, but the little flip for the small gnomes goes to the right. Just makes being able to mix and match the gnomes really fun. This guy also has his beard shaded with Copic markers. We're going to color his nose in with Copic markers and add an action wobble to the back. The tip of his hat is going to be adorned with a white pom-pom. He would even look cute on his own if you didn't want to add some little friends on either side. You could see that there. I'm going to go ahead and add my two little guys. I don't want to secure the action wobble to the card yet. I'm just using it as a guide to know where I want to put my other two gnomes. And then we'll just add some little pom-poms. I'm using red pom-poms here. And I decided not to add it quite yet. I started to, and then I remembered I want to add the I Move and arrow from the Heffy Doodle Interactively Yours stamp set. And I'm going to stamp that with clear embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder, just like I did before. I love being able to customize a stamp set and let the recipient know that there's something special. The great thing about the wobbles is they kind of go on their own a little bit, so the recipient will know that, but then they can touch it with their finger and it just wobbles back and forth, and it's just so cute and clever. Then we can attach our action wobble to our card. Isn't it so much fun? I just think he's adorable. We'll add our final gnome there over to the right. And then I will add those pom-poms to the tips of their hat. I decided to wait till the end to do that because I need to let them sit and dry completely before I play with that action wobble, because I don't want it to knock the one on the left pom-pom off. I also want to add that shading to the word Gnomies with my 2 Copic gray markers. I will be adding the liquid mercury Nouveau crystal drops to the center of the snowflakes on this card as well. When my card is completely dry, meaning those Nouveau crystal drops have dried all the way, or you could also do this before you add the panel to your top fold card base, I went ahead and decided to add some additional stamping to the inside of my card. The Gnome for the Holidays stamp set has lots of great images and sentiments, and I used the Merry Christmas sentiment on the inside of the card, stamped with Simon Says Stamp slate gray ink. And that just finishes it off beautifully. Look how much fun these action wobbles are. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these action wobble gnome cards featuring components from the Simon Says Stamp December 2019 card kit. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.